When most people think about moving to Mexico to become expatriates or just to travel there, they think about a lower cost of living, moving out of the big city, moving out of a place where it is so expensive just to live, to go down somewhere that is actually less expensive. And one of the things that I keep hearing on this channel is about how Merida, Mexico, the place that I talk about a significant amount on this channel, is getting more and more expensive. So I want to talk about that. Is it becoming more expensive? Is there a valid argument to that? Is it what it used to be as opposed to now? Or is it that you're maybe spending too much money on certain things? Let's roll the intro. So just a quick bit of background so you guys don't think that I'm completely talking out of my rear end. My name is Alexander Howell, and this channel is devoted to travel and real estate and all kinds of things, but it does have a heavy focus because of the way this channel really started on Merida, Mexico, because that is where my wife and I purchased a home a couple of years ago and actually have it now. We live in it about 1 to 2 months a year, and then we rent it out the rest of the time. Now, our plan is to be down there in retirement, so the idea of expense is very important. We live in the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and while it is a city, so there are things that are more expensive, it is not known as the most expensive city in the world. Real estate prices are fairly low compared to when you think of anywhere in California, New York, the East Coast, West Coast, that kind of thing. And even in some Midwest cities like Chicago or Dallas, Kansas City is normally going to be less expensive than those areas. So when we thought about Merida, it wasn't all cost of living. That was a very small piece of it, but it is definitely important when you think about it. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that I've noticed and some trends over the last few years since we've been, we'll say, very encouraged to continue researching this particular city and the state of Yucatan in general, and let you know exactly what I'm thinking, what you should look for if you're thinking about either becoming an expat or visiting for any period of time. Now, the first thing that I'll say is that a lot of the views on this channel do come from the videos where I talk about our home that we purchased, kind of a ruin of a house, and then renovated it. And the renovation is above and beyond what anything needs to be down there. And the reason was we had the ability, and it's also focused on us bringing down a lot of friends and a lot of family. In the months that we've stayed down there, we have probably had a grand total of 10 days where we didn't have people visiting us. Now, in retirement, when we're down there more often, especially, being snowbirds and that kind of thing, basically being up in the city, in Kansas City during the summer and going down there during the winter, it's obviously going to step off, but we did want to add certain things so that in that period of time between now and then, people are encouraged to come down, like having a second kitchen in a 2-bedroom apartment upstairs. You don't need it. We put it in. And there are a lot of people that have been down in Merida for 10, 20, even 30 years that have seen the city continue to grow and grow and grow, and yes, get more expensive. And most of the time when you're on Facebook groups or on forums, you're going to see those individuals complaining a lot that it's just becoming too expensive and they're thinking about moving on. And in some ways, that is a valid argument. Things are always going to be more expensive. A carton of eggs right now is more expensive than it was a couple of years ago, is more expensive than it was a couple of years before that, etc. and so forth. But to say that Merida is incredibly expensive, to me, is absolutely crazy. But let's look at this from 2 different perspectives before we go too far. The first perspective is just visiting. So if you're going down there for a week and you're thinking, I'm going to be in a hotel room, I'm going to eat out for every meal, just like anywhere else in the world, it can get expensive. But I would tell you a personal experience of ours being down in Merida for the first month that we were down, when we didn't even own a house. It was the first trip, and we ended up buying our house when we were down. But we stayed in Guaymatún, which is kind of a township on the coast of Yucatan. And for those of you who don't know, at this point, Merida is an inland city. It's about 20 kilometers or so from the ocean, and there's a lot of little beach towns kind of along there, the largest being Progreso, and then we were on the east side of that in Guaymatún. When we got back from that trip, even after going to the grocery store, eating out all the time, entertaining people, paying for meals, paying for drinks, doing all those things, my wife came to me and said, did you know that we owed this much on our credit card for that month? And I said, okay, well, what was the other credit card? Because we have 2 main ones. And she said, no, that was total. And it was less than half of what we would normally spend in any given month here, and it was less than half, if I remember right, by far. But that was also a couple of years ago. That was 2020, literally just when the pandemic was starting. So we got to entertain ourselves a little bit. More on that if you want to watch some other videos on this channel. But just doing that for an entire month, we spent so much less. Now, that meant going out, but that also did mean eating some things at home. Breakfast, we never really went out for, maybe 3 times total while we were down. But we really were living with several people. We had many people that came down, family, friends, that kind of thing, that were down the entire time that we were down. I think we had, in that trip, actually, I say that, in that trip we had about 7 days where we were by ourselves. So 1 week in a month we were by ourselves. But for the rest of the time, we had everybody there. So the expenses were for an entire household full of more people than just my family. Now you might think, hey, things are gonna change once you move into the city. So we stayed down there the next time to check on construction. We were down there only for 3 weeks this time, but the bills were very similar. They were less than what we have here in Kansas City. We stayed in a little bit more, but we still entertained a lot during those 3 weeks. We had 1 day by ourselves total, meaning we had 2 half days by ourselves, and that was it. For the rest of the trip, somebody was there when we were there, and we were paying for a lot of that. And on this final trip, when we actually got to go down, got to stay in our house in the Chembek neighborhood or the Merida neighborhood, we were able to go down and really kind of experience our neighborhood and everything the way that we wanted to. Now, our bills were slightly higher because we were just moving into a house, so we had to buy plates and electronics and all kinds of different things. So there was an increased cost for those things, but for everyday things, you know, your food, your drinks, stuff like that, it was incredibly low. So from the one side of somebody who owns a home and is looking at just kind of staying there and eating in a lot and that kind of thing, it's very inexpensive. Even going out to most restaurants, you'll find, if you're like me and kind of in the same area that we are, you'll find that the bill is never above anything that you would spend here for the exact same thing. And most of the time, it's significantly lower. And I'd say in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% of the bill. And we always try to tip well, which, you know, if you read those forums, they kind of, anyway, lots of opinions. But I think therein lies the difference overall. There are travelers there that are awesome and that you absolutely should enjoy traveling to the city of Merida. It's amazing. But there are also people that are living there. And I will say this as just kind of the overall feeling that I have. My opinion as to what people mean by Merida as becoming expensive as opposed to where it actually falls in line with everything. Now, there are certain things that are expensive in Merida. Real estate has definitely increased. It is a city that is becoming more widely known. It is a large city, but it also has a lot of properties that do not have anybody occupying them. And because of that, I don't see, as somebody who studied real estate finance, I don't see it as something that's going to significantly increase the cost of just your average home. However, when you think about people investing in certain houses, those particular houses, especially if they renovate them in any way similar to me, yes, those homes do become more expensive. But the taxes on said homes are significantly less, to the tune of 1/6 or less than we pay here in the United States. I pay about $6,000 a year, a little bit more in property tax here in Kansas City for our home. And down there, I paid less than $1,000, significantly less than $1,000. And now that it's completely renovated, we'll be ready to see what it is next year. But that's kind of what we're saying. When you think about food, and especially not just going out to eat, like I said, the bill is definitely reduced, but when you're thinking about food where you're eating at home, that's another thing that's really interesting, because if you go to, say, there is a Costco, there's a Walmart, if you go to Costco and you're buying a bunch of beef or something like that, is it going to be as expensive in the United States? It seemed like it was fairly comparable. But if I go down the street to one of the places that's a local place and buy a whole chicken, we bought one for $10 or less, a whole chicken with tortillas, salsas, and all kinds of different things. So your average cost of living is not that expensive. There are plenty of places that are there that you can understand why the cost of living feels so low there compared to anywhere else. But you can also go to a restaurant like, say, Crabster, which is both on the coast of Progreso on the Malecon, as well as in a nice building on Calle 60 called, I believe it's Paseo 60. And if you go to Crabster, you're going to have an excellent seafood meal. I have a meal there that is ludicrously good. It's like beer cheese and shrimp and bread. It's a carb nightmare, but it's wonderful. And the bill there for 6 people didn't hold back on drinks, all kinds of oysters and octopus and shrimp and every kind of seafood you could imagine. That bill would have been $200 plus here in Kansas City even. And there, total with tip was $120 to $130. Still expensive for your average meal that you're looking for, but not crazy. You're also going to spend more on things like electronics, on luxury goods. You know, you buy a pair of Nikes, they're going to be a little bit more there or about the same there. But as far as your everyday goods, groceries, stuff from, you know, any type of regular store, whatever it might be, I have found very few things that are anywhere near the prices that they are here, especially when it comes to groceries if you know where to shop. But on the other side, if you're somebody that's looking to travel, have a bunch of excursions and things like that, yes, things are expensive. If you want, like we have, a bunch of air conditioners, a big pool, 5 rooms, all kinds of bathrooms, like all the build your house like crazy, there is just a marked cost for all of those things. And so yes, real estate's going to get more expensive, especially if you're somebody that wants to renovate like we did. But that being said, said, you can still also buy a very nice house for under $150,000 US. They are there, and I would absolutely, by the way, recommend that you reach out to a realtor like Elizabeth Rodriguez with Yucatan Beach and City property, because she was ours and found our place and got us a great deal on the actual house that we then renovated and put too much money in. And they knew enough business to where they know all of the different things that are available out there. Although it is a bit of a Wild West market, so be careful. So all of that being said is to get to this final point. When somebody tells you that Merida, Mexico has become far more expensive, you could do every Google search in the world and it won't come close to the top 10 most expensive cities in Mexico, like Oaxaca, Mexico City, San Miguel de Allende, Cabo San Lucas, Cancun, Puerto Vallarta. It's not in that range, but you still get the option to spend a little bit more on certain things while having a cost of living that is significantly lower. And as I always say in these videos, make sure that when you're doing that, don't take advantage in the sense that you're taking advantage of the community. Give back to the community, be a part of it. You are moving there because you love the city, you love the people, and you love the experience. You don't need to bring in your thing into their thing unless you're willing to work within the parameters of that town, if that makes sense. My words aren't coming to me as well as they normally do. But in conclusion, Merida is an absolutely wonderful city that has every common amenity that you could possibly want, being a beautiful colonial city that is not that far from the beach, so you have all of the benefits of that. If you're looking to travel, it's not going to be the cheapest vacation. If you're eating out for every single meal, there are definitely restaurants that are a little bit more expensive, no doubt about it. But there are also places that give you amazing tacos like La Esquina on Paseo de Mateo that have excellent tacos, very strong margaritas, and it's still fairly inexpensive, even though it's one of the best places and one of the best areas that you can find. Shout out to La Esquina, it's absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to get back there. And there's also expat places like Hennessy's and stuff like that where they're not expensive either, but they're more expensive than the side of the road place that's serving tacos and quesadillas and that kind of thing. And yes, I know for those of you who said tacos and quesadillas, you're thinking I'm making an American thing. Let's get over that. Let's get back to it. But in a vacation setting, yes, you will spend more for rent. You will probably spend more if you're going out to meals every time with the high recommended places that look a little bit more like what you're used to. But when you actually get into the city and you start really falling in love with it, you've got your house, you're down there, whether you're an Airbnb, renting, or you buy as we have done, you're going to find that things like Uber are ludicrously cheap. An Uber from our house to the mall in the Northland was less than $10. And it's not like that's a small journey. Uber from where we are to one of my favorite restaurants, Museo de la Gastronomia, that was a $350 Uber or something like that. Merida is more expensive than it has been. It is not the thing that some people say that it is, where it's growing so exponentially that it's a bad idea to visit there, be there, or as we have done, invest there. But always be a part of the community, always appreciate that community, and live within it, and I promise you're gonna love it. So that's the end of this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Alexander Howell, and I gave you the history that we have, but if you guys want to, please feel free to follow me. I've got different socials. As most of you know, my main social is Instagram, at Alexander from KC, as in Kansas City, is where you can always find me, at Alexander from KC. If you have a question about Merida, something maybe a little bit more specific that you'd like to know, please send me a text, 816-727-7740, or hit me up on email if it's a little bit longer than a text. It's alexander@alexanderhowell.com. Very, very simple. So those are all the ways that you can get in touch with me. And also, if you don't mind, and especially if you're here still in this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you don't mind, hit that notification bell. That will let you know anytime that I go live or one of these videos pops up and is ready for your viewing pleasure. That lets you know anytime on your phone and that kind of thing. But subscribe, like, very much appreciate that. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the content. Right after this gets closed, you'll see a few videos up. Click on one of them, get you a little bit more information, or I've got them pretty well structured so you can kind of go through and see the house and that kind of thing. But thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for lasting to this point. And as always, peace.